Attention, please. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Remember me, or have I become a ghost in your memory? Are you too far away to hear me, or have you forgotten me?
I'm falling, I'm sinking, photos and me. I'm falling, losing, crawling, and begging. Are we too far to go back? Or is there still time? My darling,
Hello there, everyone. Welcome to God TV Radio, and welcome to what we would call the late night show here on the Proverbs Guys Ministries Network. I'm TTOR, of course, hijacking Steven's account like I always do. Ha ha ha. And I'm going to be continuing my slodge through the book that we started a few weeks ago called The Creation Dialogues, which is one of the best young earth creationist apologetics books I have ever read. A book that was actually written by Dr. J.D. Mitchell, who is someone that I consider to be a friend because I used to volunteer at his old creation science ministry where they had like monthly meetings where they'd bring in a speaker to give like a full-blown like 50 to 60-minute presentation, and we'd have fellowship and have the chance to buy and exchange materials in terms of apologetics. It was a great fun old time that if I could do it all over again, I absolutely would. Absolutely loved it. But before we continue on in the creation dialogues today, if at this point you're interested in me personally as a content creator, and if as we go through the creation dialogues today and we talk about what we talk about, you're interested in seeing more of my content outside of the Proverbs Guys Ministries network, well, there's several places that you can find me at, and I am all too happy to share them as long as I can share the right screens. All right, there we go. Actually, let's do this one. Perfect. So there's my YouTube channel, obviously, which if you're looking at my tags on my camera, you can see that I have my user handle for YouTube, TTOR13. I do all my content there, of course. You'll find content that's similar to what you're going to hear today, but you'll also see content that you won't find on Proverbs Guys as far as TTOR goes on other subjects and topics. But here's the YouTube channel. There's also my Spotify account, which I would highly encourage you to follow and check out because who doesn't want to grow on Spotify? There's also my Rumble channel, which is one of the places that we're actually streaming live to. If I just go ahead and refresh, you can see we're live on Rumble right now. I'm approaching 200 followers on Rumble, so if you could help me reach 200 there, that would be great. Then, of course, there's my BitChute channel where I have over 2,300 subs, and I have over 824,000 total video views. And this is also where you'll see a much bigger library/archive of my older content going all the way back to 2017. So if you're interested in seeing all of my old stuff as well as my new stuff, then I would encourage you to subscribe to my BitChute channel and check it out. There's also my FTJ Media channel, which is another place that we're live streaming to right now. So if you're watching this live on the Proverbs Guys Ministries YouTube channel, or you're watching this live on Rumble, on my Rumble channel, or you're watching this live on my FTJ Media channel, congratulations. Thank you for being here. And if you're watching this after the fact on my Spotify account or on my BitChute channel, you're just as welcome to be here. It's just a shame you couldn't be here when we were live, but you are welcome nonetheless. So those are where you can find my videos and these live streams. If you want to follow me on social media in general, the 4 best places to follow me are as follows. Haha. There's my X account, which you can see right here on the screen, handle TTOR_official. I'm a verified account, so that should make it easy. Then there's my Gab account where I have over 1,300 followers, and I'm a verified account there. There's my Getter account, which has the user handle TTOR_13 to differentiate it from my YouTube channel. And there's also my Truth Social account, which is TTOR_official. Those are the 4 best places to follow me at if you want to keep up with all things TTOR. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get set up right here on the Creation Dialogues. And we'll just go ahead and do this. There we go. That's much better. Just keeping a tab on my phone as I pull out the book to make sure we're all seeing the same thing I'm looking at. And I hope we are, because today we're going to be going through chapters 3 and 4 of the Creation Dialogues. So far, we've gone through let me take a gander here. Oh man, table of contents is eluding me. So we did the introduction and the prologue in the first part of the series. And then last time we did chapters 1 and 2. Today we're going to read at least chapters 3 and 4 of the Creation Dialogues. And these are good chapters. So if all this information I'm about to read to you guys is new to you for the first time, you'll want to buckle up, because there's a lot of it, and it's going to really open your eyes and shatter any preconceptions against the biblical worldview you may have had, while also exposing fatal flaws in the atheistic evolutionary worldview that you may not be aware of. And just in case you don't know, this book was not written by me, so when the author talks about all of his experience, it's not TTOR talking, it's my friend Dr. J.D. Mitchell who wrote the book. Okay, so now that we got all the disclaimers out of the way, let's start chapter 3, The Theory of Evolution, Angela's Story. That the theory of evolution has no foundation other than in fantasy can clearly be seen in chapter 3 of the Evolution Dialogues. The authors use some 21 pages in order to provide stories, speculations, and hypotheses with the purpose of attempting to convince the unwary of the viability of this theory, a theory that is supposed to prove how all species living and extinct are related to each other. Page 54. Microevolution, variability, occurs in life forms. The point of contention is macroevolution, which requires new abilities, new information, and increasing complexity. It does not occur, has not occurred, and cannot occur, which I also have talked about on my channel in the past. So if you go to my channel and you look up the video I did about the law of entropy, you'll want to see that, because that really shows you how impossible evolution is. In chapter 3, Angela reveals that she has been told in her biology class that the theory of evolution includes certain foundational concepts. These concepts include extinction, species, population counts, the balance of nature, and symbiotic relationships. However, extinction is not evolutionary change. Extinction means that at a certain time in history, a life form exists, and at a later time, that life form has died off. Extinction provides no mechanism for macroevolutionary change. Species population counts, the balance of nature, and symbiotic relationships are not evolution either. Angela's discussion with Dr. Dunbar in the chapter 3 prologue is a smokescreen with not a single scientific fact applicable to the issue of macroevolution. In chapter 2 of the Creation Dialogues, I provided the biblical explanation for Angela's question brought up again when she asks, why would he, God, set up nature to be so cruel? The answer I gave was that he didn't. It was mankind's sin that brought death and suffering into the creation. The current status of the universe is but a remnant of the original very good creation. Believers have been promised in God's word that this situation is not permanent and a perfect creation will one day be restored. Nevertheless, evolution has great difficulty explaining the many symbiotic and irreducibly complex relationships that science has discovered. It makes more sense, especially to the consistent Christian, that these relationships are the result of design provided by the Creator, rather than blind and brainless evolutionary processes for which there is no known mechanism. Yes, the story of evolution told by the dialogue between Angela and Dr. Dunbar is as fictional and phony as the one fabricated by the authors about Angela's procedures for installing the plant shelf with the screw gun. Let us take a closer look at these evolutionary stories as they have been expanded in chapter 3. The theory of evolution. Evolution in action. Natural selection. Other evolutionary mechanisms. Microevolution and macroevolution. In the evolution dialogues, chapter 3 begins with 3 stories, quote unquote, that are supposed to demonstrate the theory of evolution. After these stories are concluded, another 10 attempts at demonstrating the same idea are added. Each and every one of the stories is an example of interpretations based on atheistic presuppositions that we have been pointing out in the creation dialogues. In story 1 are found at least 2 interpretations that are definitely not facts. It is not a fact that DeLong paradoxus is the ancestor of Tyrannosaurus rex. It is not a fact that birds are biological heirs of dinosaurs. Both of these conclusions are interpretations based on evolutionary paleontology presuppositions. These interpretations rely on the presupposition that homology, structural similarities, prove evolution. Evolutionists always presuppose common ancestors, while creationists normally presuppose a common designer. Specifically, biblical creationists know that birds did not evolve from dinosaurs because birds were created on day 5 before animals, which were created on day 6. I have devoted over a year to the study of the poster child for evolution, Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx, I think that's how you say it, using biblical creationist presuppositions, and have come to the conclusion that Archaeopteryx was not a bird, but since it had indications of dinosaur characteristics in almost all aspects, was probably a fraud, or perhaps one of God's mosaics like the platypus. The details of my original research are available in a 2-hour-long DVD entitled Archaeopteryx, What Was It? This illustrates the importance of presuppositions, since some evolutionist and creationist scientists believe that Archaeopteryx was a bird. In this case, the agreement existed because those creationists who believe that Archaeopteryx was a bird do so because they have unwittingly accepted evolutionary presuppositions. The authors of the evolution dialogues often use the phrase scientists believe. I suggest that in discussions of evolution that the adjective some always be added to that phrase, making the statements read some creationists believe. Or no, sorry, I misread that. Making the statements read, some scientists believe. Of course, creation scientists are at odds with these scientists, but evolutionary scientists often disagree among themselves. This is to be expected when the science, quote unquote, is based on a fantasy. Time after time, the examples provided by evolutionists are examples of microevolution or variation within kinds. The AAAS authors admit this on pages 59 to 60 when they discuss dogs and Darwin's finches, but cannot quite leave it at that when they write, the study of the Galapagos Island finches has documented not only microevolutionary trends in beak size, but also a macroevolutionary trend. The finches at Galapagos started out as finches, changed into finches, and are still changing to slightly different finches. This is not the evolution that proves that all species living and extinct are related to each other. None of the examples provided by the authors illustrate the variety of ways that scientists today are accumulating evidence to test the theory of evolution. No, they are examples of microevolutionary experiments, and the macroevolution these experimenters promote must be imagined. And as discussed earlier, the insurmountable problem with that exercise is the changes are headed down the track in the wrong direction. The experiments show not evolutionary progression, but rather de-evolutionary changes. If only the faith in God of the average Christian were as strong as is the faith of evolutionists in their God, naturalism. On page 54, we read of the accumulation of many small incremental changes to traits handed down through different lines of descendants over millions of years. But the fossil record only shows abrupt appearance and stasis, and evolutionists know this. Those evolutionists who are willing to admit the facts have been forced to develop other hypotheses, such as punctuated equilibrium, which we read about on page 68 of the Evolution Dialogues. According to one hypothesis, termed punctuated equilibrium, a species that has been stable for millions of years evolves into new lineages in a period as brief as a few tens of thousands of years. I doubt the originators of that hypothesis, Gould and Eldridge, would agree with the authors that punctuated equilibrium applies only under certain circumstances. The abrupt appearance and stasis of the fossil record exists throughout and is not only in certain circumstances. Excuse me. The late Stephen Jay Gould wrote, "The extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference, however reasonable, not the evidence of fossils." Paleontologists have paid an exorbitant price for Darwin's argument. We fancy ourselves as the only true students of life's history, yet to preserve our favorite account of evolution by natural selection, we view our data as so bad that we never see the very process we profess to study. The history of most fossil species includes two features particularly inconsistent with gradualism. One, stasis. Most species exhibit no directional change during their tenure on Earth. They appear in the fossil record looking much the same as when they disappear. Morphological change is usually limited and directionless. Sudden appearance. In any local area, a species does not arise gradually by the steady transformation of its ancestors. It appears all at once and fully formed. If gradualism is more a product of Western thought than a fact of nature, then we should consider alternative philosophies of change to enlarge our realm of constraining prejudices. In the Soviet Union, for example, scientists are trained with a very different philosophy of change, the so-called dialectal laws, reformulated by Engels from Hegel's philosophy. The dialectal laws are explicitly punctuational. Eldridge and I were fascinated to learn that most Russian paleontologists support a model very similar to our punctuated equilibria. The connection cannot be accidental. Now we get back to J.D. Mitchell's writing. Evolution is so pliable that we can believe in the accumulation of many small incremental changes over millions of years and at the same time the evolution into new lineages in a brief period. Both of these beliefs are not based on evidence, but on a lack of evidence. Read Gould's quote again if you don't see this immediately. Again, we see that the evolution seen by the men of evolutionary faith is presupposed and not proven. And I see a comment by Chocolate Espresso 7 who says, "I live in Missouri and I went looking for fossils today. Some that I found were so well preserved, and the shells of clams are in the rock like new. The fossils look the same as clams today." Well, congratulations. You've discovered what everyone else has. But it's important that you brought that to this discussion. Oh, there's another comment by Chocolate Espresso 7. "These clams and corals I found were on top of a high hill and are supposed to be in water or ocean. Anyone denying the flood would be shocked if they saw the fossils we have here." Yeah, I'm pretty sure they would. But let's keep reading. Again, we see that the evolution seen by the men of evolutionary faith is presupposed and not proven. And Gould believed the way he did primarily because of his Marxist leanings. His atheistic philosophy drove his conclusions further away from God instead of toward God. The authors that the study of fruit flies may lead to a better understanding of evolution's time frames, yet a century of fruit fly experiments involving 3,000 consecutive generations gives absolutely no basis for believing in believing that any natural or artificial process can cause an increase in complexity or viability. Theodosius Dobzhansky wrote, "Most mutants which arise in any organism are more or less disadvantageous to their possessors. The classical mutants obtained in Drosophila, the fruit fly, usually show deterioration, breakdown, or disappearance of some organs. Mutants are known which diminish the quantity or destroy the pigment in the eyes, and in the body reduce the wings and eyes, bristles, legs. Many mutants are in fact lethal to their possessors. Mutants which equal the normal fly in vigor are a minority, and mutants that would make a major improvement of the normal organization in the normal environments are unknown." End quote. So we can subject these poor flies to all kinds of external and internal substances and actions, and after thousands of generations, they are still flies, albeit usually very bad off flies. These experiments have no way to lead to better understanding of macroevolutionary timeframes because there is no macroevolution taking place. Another indication of the falsity of the evolutionary faith is the use of the tree of life analogy. Evolutionists know, as Gould wrote above, that there is no such thing. Creationists would say there is a forest of life or a lawn of life, but there is definitely no evidence for a tree of life as sketched by Darwin. I'll discuss this topic of phylogenetic trees more when we get into cladistics. On page 63 of the Evolution Dialogues, we read, "Homologies provide more evidence for relatedness. This is a total understatement so far as the beliefs of evolutionists. For paleontologists, their life's work is based almost totally on homology. Evolutionary paleontologists believe that homology is all that is needed to prove evolution from common ancestors. That this is true is clear from their published work, which almost always starts with the fact of similarity in structure being equal to proof of common descent. Most books on paleontology do not even bother to state this presupposition. Creation scientists, on the other hand, believe that their argument for a common designer easily trumps the evolutionist paradigm. Evolutionists hold by faith to the postulate that the wings of a bat, the flippers of a dolphin, and the arms of a man are homologous organs and have evolved from the paired fins of a fish ancestor. A strong acknowledgement of the inability of homology to scientifically support evolutionary philosophy is the movement away from the standard terminology, which in the past has denoted simple to complex gradual evolutionary changes. Noted dinosaur paleontologist Dr. Peter Dodson concluded, "Notice that I made these statements without resorting to the word primitive. I also avoided using the word advanced. What is going on here? While valiantly resisting the assaults of postmodernism, scientific language, alas, is not immune to the dynamism of linguistic evolution. The terms primitive and advanced are no longer politically correct and so must be expunged from our vocabulary. They are to be replaced by the terms basal or generalized and derived, thereby avoiding unfortunate connotations of superiority or inferiority." The reason why there are similarities in the inventions of mankind is these similarities are forced due to the requirement to accomplish the functions for which the inventions were made in the first place. Similarly, I believe that God used similar designs to accomplish similar functions in various life forms in his creation. Of course, his capabilities would far exceed any that man could ever formulate. Great is our Lord and mighty in power. His understanding has no limits. Psalm 147:5. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Romans 11:34. The atheistic presuppositions of evolution require a commitment to naturalism and a rejection of God. This is not a commitment to science, it is a commitment to a false philosophy. On page 64 of the Evolution Dialogues is written, "A sufficient number of such transitional fossils have been found to document the evolutionary line that descends from primitive jawless fish to sharks, skates, and rays, from early land mammals to whales, from dinosaurs to birds, from primates to modern Homo sapiens, and down through many other lines of macroevolutionary change. I have been looking for transitional fossils for decades and have not found any in museums or in the literature. I have seen a few in cartoons, but we know that those are only from the minds of the cartoonists. Remember what Stephen Jay Gould wrote about these transitions? A true transitional fossil is one that exhibits an in-process change in structure. A fossil showing a limb in the process of changing from a fin to a leg would be a transitional fossil. It requires tremendous mental gymnastics to be able to visualize how such a creature would ever survive to pass on its new features to the next generation. The only place where these types of transitional fossils exist is in the minds of evolutionists. The fossil record does not provide any evidence of true transitional forms. If evolution were true, there should be millions of these transitional forms. What we find instead, as Gould wrote, is stasis and abrupt appearance. This is exactly the opposite to what the evolution model predicts, but exactly what the creation model predicts. After 1 billion fossils have been found and cataloged over the past 200 years, it should be clear that transitional forms are not found because they never existed. Darwin's greatest fear has been realized, and his theory does not hold up. As I have visited secular natural history museums over the past few years, I have noticed that the old tree of life diagrams and time charts are slowly disappearing. This is because of the lack of transitional fossils. There is no way to place life forms on the trees except at the tips and nodes of the branches, which have become philosophically unsatisfactory. Therefore, secular scientists have begun using a different phylogenetic classifying system called cladistics. This is designed to replace the Linnean taxonomy system that has been commonly in use for centuries. Cladistics allows for the artificial determination of supposed ancestral relationships based totally on feature similarities between organisms. While lending itself nicely to computer analysis, each relationship is totally artificial and not based on any biological reality, such as from the fossil record. Because of this artificial relationship between life forms, cladistics is still controversial. I'll make sure for a second. Oh, it's ugly. Oh, I'm unmuted. Oh, that's good. All right, there we go. We're good. To answer your question, Robin Webster, 1968, I am reading The Creation Dialogues, which is a creationism apologetics book written by my friend Dr. J.D. Mitchell. What you're seeing on the screen is the cover art based off of the Amazon listing of the book. And later on, I will put the Amazon listing for this book in the chat so that if you guys are interested in getting it, you can. It's not terribly expensive. But moving on, where were we? Because of this artificial relationship between life forms, cladistics is still controversial. Cladistics is almost exclusively being used today by dinosaur paleontologists since they usually have so little to work with, only bones, skulls, claws, and teeth. Cladograms are a great admission of the fact of the presupposition of evolution, and cladistics is clearly seen to have been devised in order to allow for the evolutionary common descent classifications that the living and fossil evidence does not show. On their website, the American Museum of Natural History in New York City uses American coins, a penny, a nickel, a dime, and a quarter, to demonstrate to school children how cladistics works. However, if one changes the features of the coins that are selected from those given by the example, one finds that the cladogram also completely changes. That is, the progressive relationships of the coins are to each other change. This is another way to see that the cladistics, or that cladistics, is an artificial categorization method. Cladistics has been forced into evolutionary dinosaur paleontology by the lack of transitional fossils and by the continuing need for the evolutionist paradigm to accept the false presupposition that homology proves evolution. Creation scientist Dr. John Morris summarizes his decades of study of the fossil record. We see that the fossil record is a record quite different from that presented in support of evolution. Each basic plant and animal type appeared abruptly and fully functional, and then experienced stasis throughout its tenure. Each type was complex and distinct from the start without having descended from some other ancestral type, particularly from a less complex type. Then we're going to skip page 32 because it's just diagrams. And we're going to read page 33, which is the last page of this chapter. All basic types which have ever lived were present at the start, and while some have subsequently gone extinct, no new basic types have appeared since the beginning. We have reason to believe substantially all basic forms which have ever lived have been found as fossils. A general rule is that the fossils extend through lengthy stratigraphic range with little or no change. Most of the fossils are remains of marine invertebrates found in catastrophic deposits, often in death poses with an incomplete ecosystem present. These predominantly marine fossils are almost all found on the continents, not in the ocean. The fossil record is thus quite incompatible with evolution and uniformitarianism, but remarkably consistent with the biblical record. Creation of all things in perfect form and function, the curse on all things due to man's rebellion, and the great flood of Noah's day which first destroyed and then renovated the entire planet. Creation thinking predicts the evidence, while evolution must distort and flex the evidence and its position to accommodate it. End quote. In conclusion, there is a lot of mostly public money being spent to keep evolutionary scientists busy. And as mentioned earlier, a lot is at stake in both careers and fame. But the actual science being done is, for the most part, about as productive as was the work of the alchemists in the Middle Ages. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Isaiah 40, 28 through 31. That, ladies and germs, is the conclusion of chapter 3 of the Creation Dialogues. Now, before we get into chapter 4, I need to get myself a really big drink of ice cold water. So I'm going to go ahead and put on some music for us. It's going to be music that I'm sure we can all appreciate. Music that comes from yours truly. The question is, which one? Because I just have so many songs. So many songs. You know what? This is a Christian channel. Let's go find a song that's predominantly about Jesus. Let's put on a song that I did about almost a year ago, or actually about 7 months ago or so, called King of Kings. Let's do that one. Just gotta let it upload first because, files be loading. But once this thing is ready, I'll hit you up with the King of Kings, and I'm going to go get some water. And when I get back, and when the song is over, we're going to go through chapter 4. So be back in a couple of minutes, ladies and germs.
You rise the clouds of glory, the lion and the lamb. No demon dares to stand against the great I am. The war's done, his reign begun, his kingdom without end. All honor, power, glory to the risen Son of Man. King of kings, Lord of lords, everlasting, sovereign Lord. Hell trembles, heaven sings, bow before the King of kings. O King of kings, wayfarer of love.
Hello there, everyone. I'm back. That was a good song, I think, anyway. But anyway, I got my ice cold water to sip on as I go through chapter 4 of the Creation Dialogues. This chapter is titled Initial Responses to Darwin's Theory. Angela's Story. In chapter 4, I forgot. Yeah, we need to have the cover of this thing on the screen. All right. Let's go ahead and do this. Inception. There we go. All right, now we're good. All right, chapter 4, Initial Responses to Darwin's Theory. Angela's Story. In chapter 4, the step-by-step evolutionary indoctrination of Angela continues. There is no new philosophic justification introduced in this chapter for Christians to believe in Darwinian evolution. In fact, the repetition is more than just trite, and Angela's campus ministry advisor, Phil Compton, is represented to have little knowledge of the foundational basis for Christianity, i.e., the second person of the triune God, Jesus Christ. Christianity is not just believing in a God. Instead, Christianity is believing in Jesus Christ, the person that the biblical account takes 66 books to reveal. Those Christians who are influenced to compromise their beliefs so as to be compatible with the position of the evolution dialogues and the AAAS will, as I have been emphasizing, need to logically reject Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. This is why biblical creationists are so adamant that Christians must understand what they are getting into when attempting to mix naturalism with their faith. Whoops, I lost track as my eyes are like, boop, 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 boop. The truth is not as stated in chapter 4 by Phil when he says, I'm saying that there is nothing inherent in evolution that is antagonistic to Christian belief. If we understand what is meant by the word evolution when used as a description of particles to people by the authors of the evolution dialogues and the AAAS, we are forced to logically throw out the Bible from Christianity. If the Bible is thrown out, Jesus is the baby that goes out with the bathwater. And when Jesus is thrown out, it is my contention that what is left is not Christianity. Evolutionists believe that Thomas Henry Huxley's reported response to Bishop Wilberforce was a great victory of the evolutionary argument over the religious. Phil indicates the same attitude when he recounts the old myth for Angela. But just what would this mean if it were true that Huxley's supposed argument was, or is now, victorious? It would mean that the concept of man evolving from rocks to pond scum to fish to apes and finally to a conscious human being would be an idea superior to, so God created man in his own image, in the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. Genesis 1:27. It would mean that Jesus was just an ignorant man and not the creator God when he said, "Haven't you heard that at the beginning the creator made them male and female?" Matthew 19:4. People can and do believe anything, and the idea of man evolving from rocks is very popular. However, this concept is not in any way compatible with the Bible, and why knowledgeable Christians would want to incorporate the idea into their faith is beyond comprehension. Now, I want to take a little pause right here because I can already see evolutionists and atheists on the internet listening to this part of the book and going, "We do not teach that everything comes from rocks." Well, in a manner of speaking, you guys do, because if you go to the majority opinion of the scientific and academic community, what you discover is that when it comes to abiogenesis and the evidence for it, and that the mainstream narrative and consensus is currently, the current consensus is that about 3.8 to 4.2 billion years ago, some microbacteria formed on some rocks near hydrothermal vents underneath the oceans, and all organic life evolved from that. And the reason why they believe this is because they found some fossilized some fossilized microbacteria near some hydrothermal vents under the ocean about a decade ago, I think it was, or maybe a little less. And so, yes, in a manner of speaking, evolutionists do teach that everything comes from rocks, that ultimately humans evolved from rocks. But if you get into the details, it's that humans ultimately evolved from microbacteria that formed on rocks. But let's keep reading. Finally, Angela says, God's motivation, I still would like to understand that. I can only say that this is another indication that Angela and those she hypothetically represents does not take the Bible seriously, or perhaps has not studied it. It is only by studying God's word that one can learn and then understand God's motivation. That study will result in seeing that God's motivation is driven by his unfathomable love for us. Initial responses to Darwin's theory. A topic of personal interest. The authors of the Evolution Dialogues are correct to say that the origin of species accomplished two things. One, it raised doubt about God having a personal relationship to mankind. Two, it raised doubt about the source of human morality. For centuries, most people, and Christians especially, understood the straightforward message of the Bible concerning these two topics. It was clear that God made man in his image, and that man was not able to determine right from wrong without God's commandments. And thinking people would, in the late 19th century, be very concerned about these very important issues, since they could clearly see that they would be interpreted to refute or at least make irrelevant the teachings of God's word. 200 years have passed, and the situation has not changed. Accepting Darwinism and its need for millions of years of macroevolutionary changes either refutes the Bible or makes it irrelevant. Of course, that is the issue. The Evolution Dialogue's position is that this way of thinking is a good thing and should be acceptable to Christians. The Creation Dialogue's position is that this is heresy and an unacceptable compromise that calls God a liar and tends to undermine the Christian faith. Well, it doesn't tend to undermine the Christian faith. It always does. Slight editorial made right there. Let's continue reading, though. I always get a kick out of the sensitivity of evolutionists to the phrase monkey to man. They complain, it is not correct to say that we advocate the evolution of man from monkeys. Well, whether we call our supposed evolutionary ancestors hominids, apes, or something else, we can be sure that any scientific depictions of these ancestors would never be identified by any 5-year-old child as anything other than a monkey. So to be affable, we can say that we have not evolved from monkeys, but from a life form that looks like a monkey. And that is the evolutionary position, ladies and gentlemen. Humans and apes evolved from an ape-like ancestor. That's the current narrative. Excuse me. Rejection, qualified acceptance. I believe that the authors have misinterpreted the position of Charles Lyell concerning Darwin's theory of evolution on page 78. In the evolution dialogues, we read, however, there were aspects of Darwin's theory that Lyell found difficult to reconcile with his beliefs about humankind's special position in God's creation. In my personal study of Lyell's writings, I have come to the following entirely different conclusions. 1. Lyell was not a biblical Christian. His writings indicate that he was a deist or perhaps Unitarian. 2. Among Lyell's goals was to minimize or totally erase the influence of Genesis chapters 1 through 11 on his intellectual society. In fact, I'm not sure he believed any of the books in the Bible attributed to Moses by most biblical scholars. He resented the fact that many still accepted the words of Moses over his quote-unquote scientific opinions. 3. Lyell did not dispute aspects of Darwin's theory on theological grounds. Instead, he disputed them on naturalistic grounds. By the time of Lyell's death in 1875, number 4, he had accepted most of Darwin's positions on evolution by natural selection. It is not a correct interpretation of history to place Lyell in the qualified acceptance category for Darwin's theory, as have the authors. Darwin and Lyell were two peas in a pod, and together can be given most of the credit, blame, for the evolutionary philosophy that developed in the 19th century and continues to this day. Charles Darwin would likely be totally unknown today if it hadn't been for Charles Lyell's writings and Lyell's personal influence on Darwin throughout their lives. Enthusiastic support. I don't know if it is accurate to call Thomas Henry Huxley Darwin's bulldog, but it would be very accurate to call him evolution's bulldog. Huxley epitomizes the men of scientific bent of the 19th century who took exception to the control of the Anglican Church over academia and were determined to wrest that control away. In fact, Huxley may have had more to do with that tilt of the scientific balance away from the church to the secular than any other one man in Western history. Excuse me for a second. Someone was asking if I was live streaming. Of course I am, guys. You can be my witnesses. Let's see. It is typical of believers in the worldview of naturalism to identify their way of thinking as reason-based. This type of reason believes that everything came from nothing and that life evolved from rocks. While Christians are often painted as having thinking not based on reason, in reality, the truth is the opposite. Our religion is one that is based on a book that has proven reliable over many centuries and that presents many specific and accurate prophecies. These prophecies alone are excellent justification for people to accept the Bible as reasonable in every respect. Since the creator is outside of time, the inventor of time actually, he can make 100% accurate prophecies that point to the highest possible standard of reason. Naturalism's reason is man-based, while Christianity's reason is God-based. Hold on a sec. I'll bring up the chat over here. Just making sure there's still people there. Biblical creationists do not argue that there is no evidence for natural selection, but that there is no correct scientific interpretation of this evidence that proves macroevolution or an age of millions of years for the Earth. Asa Gray and many others have been able to advance a compromised belief in theistic evolution. Theistic evolution is a belief that attempts to insert biological evolution in millions of years into the Genesis story and instead ends up throwing out the Bible. Let me reread that. Theistic evolution is a belief that attempts to insert biological evolution in millions of years into the Genesis story and instead ends up throwing the Bible out. The following discussion and comparisons will make that clear. Topic No, hold on. I'm skipping ahead. Origin belief comparison. To illustrate my point regarding theistic evolution, I have chosen 15 different topics of the origins controversy. I will discuss each of these topics with respect to 3 different belief systems, which are biblical creation, BC, based on the Bible, molecules to man evolution, MME, based on the beliefs of people like those in the AAS, and theistic evolution, TE, based on the beliefs of those who are trying to combine MME with the Bible. Topic number 1. Where did life come from? This is an easy question to answer for BC, since the Bible is consistent in stating that life was created by God in the beginning. The MME position is that life evolved from rocks, which were the result of the explosion of stars. The TE position is that God somehow created life in some simple form, and then it evolved over long periods of time to the present situation. There is no agreement here between BC and TE except there is a God. The BC God is a personal God, while the TE God cannot be considered personal when it comes to the creation of life. Topic number 2. How did life form variety come about? The BC position is that God created the various original kinds of life with information in its DNA sufficient to allow much variation and with the purpose to allow for foreseen needs for adaptation to changing environmental and ecological conditions. The MME and TE positions are identical. They believe natural selection and mutations can explain all variety from simple common ancestors. Topic number 3. How did man originate? The BC position is that God made man in the beginning from the dust of the earth and then made woman from man. The MME and TE positions are identical, and that is that man evolved from ape-like ancestors. The BC position is that there is only one race, the human race. See Acts 17:26. The MME and TE positions are identical, stating that there are 4 races. Topic number 5. What is the origin of the earth and the universe? The BC position is that God created everything in the beginning over a period of 6 ordinary days. The MME position is that everything was made from nothing as the result of a Big Bang. Similarly, the TE position is that God used a Big Bang to create everything. Topic number 6. How are the biblical days of creation explained? The BC position is that the days of creation are ordinary, approximately 24-hour days. The MME and TE positions are identical, namely that the days of creation are a myth. Now, I will expand on that for a second here and point out that there is different positions within old earth creationism. There's day-age theory, which is that each of the days of creation was a period of a couple billion years, roughly. And then there's the gap theory, which is that basically you can stuff billions of years between the creation of the earth and universe and the second day. Basically between days 1 and 2. You know what? I think I'm remembering that wrong now that I'm thinking about it. Well, I know for a fact that the gap theory timeline teaches that Adam and Eve were created 6,000 years ago on a roughly 14 to 16 billion year timeline. So that logically means that between the beginning of the earth and universe and the first day of creation is where they stuff the billions of years in the day-age theory timeline. So you can probably find theistic evolutionists who believe in either day-age theory or they believe in gap theory. So anyway, let's continue. Topic number 7. What is the age of the earth? The BC position is that the earth is about 6,000 years old. The MME and TE positions are identical, that the earth is very old with a current estimate of 4.6 billion years. Topic number 8. What about dinosaurs? The BC position is that dinosaurs were created by God on day 6 along with all of the other animals and with man. The MME and TE positions are identical, that dinosaurs evolved and then went extinct about 65 million years ago. Topic number 9. What about death, disease, and suffering? The BC position is that death, disease, and suffering are punishment for sin. All right. Had to get some water there. Which resulted from the fall in the Garden of Eden as described in Genesis. The MME and TE positions are identical, that death, disease, and suffering have always been part of life and are in fact good because they are what forces evolution, survival of the fittest, and the progress of life towards better and better organisms. Number 10, is there a moral authority? The BC position is that the Bible is the authoritative and inerrant moral authority directly from God. The MME position is that there really is no moral authority except for what may have evolved for survival or what may match each person's personal preferences. The TE position is that the Bible may offer some moral guidance for certain cases as determined by each person's personal preferences. Topic number 11. What is the general view of the Bible? As stated above, the BC position is that the Bible is authoritative and inerrant. The MME position is that the Bible is just another man-made book that may be acceptable for some people to read for lifestyle advice. The TE view is all over the map, which should be expected since the Bible is authoritative only on certain issues. Topic number 12. What do the geologic layers represent? The BC position is that the geologic layers are a result of the year-long cataclysmic worldwide flood as described in Genesis chapters 6 through 9. The MME and TE positions are identical, namely that the geologic layers are evidence for millions of years of Earth history. Topic number 13. What about the Genesis flood? The BC position is that it happened exactly as described in the Bible, was cataclysmic, and covered the surface of the entire earth. The MME position is that the Genesis flood is myth, and the TE position is that if it happened at all, it was a small local flood in the Middle East. Topic number 14. What is the fossil record? The BC position is that the fossil record is evidence for God's judgment and the Genesis flood, where all land animals and all people, except for the 8 that were on Noah's Ark, were destroyed. The MME and TE positions are identical, namely that the fossil record is evidence for evolution. Topic number 15. What was Noah's Ark? The BC position is that Noah's Ark was a large barge-like vessel with the best possible design to survive a huge flood. The MME and TE positions are identical, that Noah's Ark was a modest vessel or perhaps another myth. Now I gotta get some more water. Excuse me. Turns out it's tough to read for over an hour straight. All right, here we go. An analysis of the 3 positions shows that the BC and TE positions on origins do not agree on any of the 15 topics. I added the 15 there. Do not agree on any of the topics. This means that since the BC positions are taken consistently and directly from the Bible, that those holding to the TE positions have, in effect, thrown out the Bible. Also, it should be a concern to every Christian that the MME and TE positions are identical on 10 out of the 15 topics. It was a great concern for me prior to 1984 when, as a nominal Christian, I unsuccessfully attempted to understand the Bible from a theistic evolutionary viewpoint. Theistic evolution is just as bankrupt as is atheistic evolution, which should be expected since they are both based on the same presuppositions. And I think we're getting close to we're like in the last third of chapter 4, I think we are. We're getting to the good parts, though. Evolution of scientific and public opinion. The authors of the Evolution Dialogues write on page 81, a main concern was whether the Earth was old enough to accommodate evolutionary history. Another concern had to do with the many gaps in the fossil record. Such concerns were eventually overcome by new evidence from the fields of geology and paleontology. So nearly halfway through the book, we see that the pro-evolution authors are aware of the major problems of evolutionary theory. In the creation dialogues, I have made it clear that these major problems have not been overcome by any scientific evidences. Instead, they have been overcome by faith using no God, everything from nothing, evolution from common ancestors over billions of years, and homology proving evolution presuppositions. With those presuppositions as a foundation, any evidence from the fields of geology and paleontology would have to be interpreted as proving evolution in millions of years. As of today, there still exist no true transitional fossils, and so all of the many gaps in the fossil record are still an insurmountable problem for evolutionists. I'm going to take a little break to check over on Rumble and FTJ Media. Looks like we got no chats going on there, but that's okay. Totally okay. And then I got another dinger. Right. Excuse me. All right, got that solved. Now let's continue. As of today, the old age of the Earth is just presupposed and not proven. What we know about the origin of life and variation in life forms tells us that even 4.6 billion years is not enough time for macroevolution to occur. This is because macroevolution is impossible without the necessary information needed to allow for any kind to new kinds of changes. No, the information is not in the genome and the locomotive is headed down the track in the wrong direction. You may ask, why are these points about evolution from the biblical creationist view being repeated so often in the creation dialogues? The answer is that the points are provided no more often than are the opposite viewpoints in the evolution dialogues. A favorite method of argument for the evolutionary view is, if the argument is not accepted at first, keep repeating it with more and more emphasis until the message is blasted at top volume. It is only fair to be able to offer a defense whenever the biblical view is attacked. Evolving Christian responses, the response from other religions. Since the evolution dialogues is fundamentally an attack on the biblical Christian worldview, I will not comment on the author's opinions regarding the Roman Catholic Church, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. However, I do have some things to say about Christian liberal mainline denominations. I better drink some water for this one. Excuse me. All right, here we go. I grew up in the United Methodist Church and was a member of the Presbyterian Church USA for some 20 years. My experience is that these two liberal denominations continue to see a decline in membership and influence that directly parallels their ongoing acceptance of non-biblical compromises. The words doctrine, hell, and judgment have become dirty words in most of these denominations, and so they have no difficulty compromising on most any doctrinal aspect of the Bible, especially on the foundational passages from Genesis chapters 1 through 11. Along with the Episcopal Church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church, and the United Church of Christ, many pastors from the United Methodists and many Presbyterians have joined together to compose the vast majority of those pastors in the United States who have publicly come out in favor of evolution. In my experience, most of the preachers of these two denominations first mentioned seldom use the Bible as the basis for their sermons. Therefore, the sermons they preach are filled with the latest worldly advice and are devoid of any godly meat. The AAAS position is that all Protestant churches should devolve to the position of these liberal churches concerning the acceptance of evolution in millions of years, which would lead to making the Bible irrelevant for all that do so. Churches of all persuasions struggle to grow and to keep young people in this age of rampant immorality, but the mainline denominations are leading the way to extermination, a situation that I suspect would match the goal of the AAAS. Build up toward backlash. The fundamentals listed on page 88 of the Evolution Dialogues, no matter who asserted them in the 20th century, are impossible to refute biblically. The higher criticism that brought the backlash has been shown to be worthless and invalid by conservative theological scholarship. The truth in the early 20th century was that evolution in millions of years were non-biblical. The truth 100 years later is that evolution in millions of years are non-biblical. Since God and the Bible are the same yesterday, today, tomorrow, and forever, the truth at any time in the future will be that evolution in millions of years are non-biblical. Again, we see that acceptance of the AAAS position means rejection of the Bible, and on more than just Genesis 1 through 11. Anyone, no matter their belief system, could quickly verify that the Bible unequivocally states the truth of the so-called fundamentals. I will not take the time to fill this chapter with the literally hundreds of scriptures that would attest to this fact. Evolution on trial. The author's description of the Scopes monkey trial is in large part factual. The 1955 fictional play Inherit the Wind was based loosely on the Scopes trial and had as its stated purpose to take a stand against the McCarthyism of the 1950s. The 1960 movie, however, is much more commonly remembered by the public and was an overt attack on biblical creationism. The movie portrays Bible-believing Southern Christians as intolerant, ignorant bigots and totally distorts the facts of the actual Scopes trial. A very good comparison of the true historical facts to those portrayed in the play and the movie of the Scopes trial can be found at the Monkey Trial website. My personal impression of the play's message in the movie is that tolerance is always a good thing and something everyone should strive for, unless it is tolerance of the biblical Christian worldview and the rights of biblical Christians to express their opinions in the public marketplace of ideas. Inherit the Wind remains one of the most popular American plays of all time. To this day, it remains a favorite production for high schools and colleges and a required reading book for many school systems. If one looks into what evolutionary science was being taught in the public schools in Tennessee in 1925, we find that most of it has been determined to be false and abandoned by the evolutionists of today. It is an important fact to note, too, that the only evolution that was forbidden to be taught in the public schools of Tennessee by the Butler Act was human evolution. A list of some so-called evidences for human evolution that were commonplace in 1925 scientific circles, as well as around and at the Scopes trial, follow. Number 1, vestigial organs. At the time of the Scopes trial, many scientists believed that the human body had numerous parts, e.g. tonsils, appendix, little toe, nipples on males, parathyroid gland, thymus, and coccyx, I think is how you say that were vestigial and useless leftovers from man's evolutionary ancestors. Since the 1920s, the designed purpose of these... Let me reread that. Since the 1920s, the design purpose of all these organs has been determined, and the vestigial argument has been largely abandoned. Because the purpose of something is not known does not mean it has no purpose. We are currently observing a similar phenomenon with evolutionists' interpretations of DNA. If they don't know the purpose of an aspect of this life-defining molecule, they tend to call it junk. Number 2, embryonic recapitulation. The concept that embryos follow a path of development in the womb that recapitulates the presumed evolution of man from pond scum to fish to amphibian and so forth was popularized by Christian-hating biologist Ernst Haeckel in the 19th century, another contemporary of Lyell and Darwin. Haeckel even faked some of his embryo drawings of humans and animals as evidence for his theory. Haeckel's fraud and the falsity of his theory are now well known, but the concept has had a slow death in evolutionary circles and is still touted in some high school biology textbooks. Not to mention the fact that last time I checked, a popular evolutionist named P.Z. Myers actually believes in Ernst Haeckel's theory still, even though the theory was completely fraudulent and the dude literally had to fake his evidence in order to get people to believe it. Yeah, so much for being all about reason and evidence. It seems obvious that one reason for hanging on to this idea is so abortion counselors can try to convince mothers that their unborn babies are just globs of matter. True science has long ago shown that a woman's fertilized egg is a complete human being with a full set of genetic instructions. The Bible teaches that God takes a personal interest in each person before birth. We read in Psalm 139, verses 13 through 16, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place." Number 3, Neanderthal man. At the time of the Scopes monkey trial, Neanderthal man was depicted by scientists as a brute somewhere between an ape and a man on the evolutionary time path. The current interpretation of Neanderthal by almost all knowledgeable scientists is he was completely human. It has been proved that Neanderthals buried their dead, played the flute, organized themselves in social structures, and related to one another as people do today. Neanderthal bones were somewhat more robust than those of modern man, but they still lie within the present range of variation. On average, their brains were actually bigger than those of today. The authors of the Evolution Dialogues on page 144 include an artist's depiction showing Neanderthal woman as a savage. However, using the skeletal evidence, creationist presuppositions, a depiction with modern clothing, including a bra, and a current hairstyle, this gal would not draw any attention as a shopper in the women's section of a typical American department store. One biblical creationist explanation of Neanderthals would be that they were a people forced to migrate away from the Tower of Babel. They would have had language and technology of the time. They ended up migrating to the present-day European area, which at that time was very cold, forcing them to survive by living in caves. Neanderthals were not stupid brutes on their way to becoming humans, but were intelligent humans forced to exist in a difficult environmental situation. The human genome has devolved since the time of the Neanderthals, thus increasing the effects of mutations. If Neanderthals lived in our times of advanced technology, they might today be among our greatest athletes, scientists, and artists. In fact, it could be said that some of their present-day descendants, Europeans, fit that description. Well, isn't that interesting? We are almost done with chapter 4. We just got 2 more sections to read through. Thank you for staying with me this long if you are still watching live. I appreciate that. Number 4, Piltdown Man. A major basis of the ACLU's scientific evidence or scientific case for human evolution in the Scopes case was Piltdown Man, discovered in 1912 in Piltdown, a small village in England. At the time, it was thought by many reputable scientists that fossil evidence consisting of a human skull cap with the jaw of an ape was conclusive proof of ape men having existed. By 1953, it was generally known in the anthropological community that Piltdown Man was a hoax. The human skull cap had been modified to look old and was combined with an ape's jaw where the teeth had been filed down. Nevertheless, as a result of this hoax, several generations were influenced to believe in human evolution, and Piltdown Man was still in biology textbooks used in classes as evolutionary evidence long after 1953. The Piltdown Man hoax illustrates the fact that people tend to readily believe things that match their presuppositions, no matter what the evidence really shows. As one investigative author put it, that the gentlemen who launched the Piltdown Man were possessed by the preconceived idea that a missing link possessing his features would one day be found will become abundantly clear when we observe their pattern of behavior. That the scientific world in general had the same idea was neatly summed up by that famous scientist Sir Arthur Keith in his Antiquity of Man, published in 1924. That we should discover a race as Piltdowns sooner or later has been an article of faith in the anthropologist's creed ever since Darwin's time. Number 5, Nebraska Man. And no, it's not a person from Nebraska. Another scientific evidence for the evolution of humans at the time of the Scopes trial was Nebraska Man. In the June 24th, 1922 issue of the Illustrated London News, a 2-page story sensationalized the finding of a single tooth found in the state of Nebraska. In the newspaper story, an artist was able to illustrate not only the depiction of Nebraska Man, but also his slovenly naked wife as she gathered roots for dinner. By 1927, it was determined that the tooth was not human, but was instead from the jaw of a peccary. This incident is a most spectacular example of how people will believe anything, especially things that advance their presupposed philosophical views. As each decade goes by, new missing links are discovered that are given sensational press coverage as being the proof needed to once and for all finally prove the fact of evolution. But these proofs are always set aside for the next proof that provides the next missing link that everyone has long awaited. If we only needed one missing link that would prove evolution, there would be no need to continue looking for it. In reality, the links are all missing. There are no true transitional fossils, and Darwin's theory is bankrupt and should be buried. See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the basic principles of this world, rather than on Christ. Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. Ladies and gentlemen, we have made it through chapters 3 and 4 of the Creation Dialogues. Congratulations. You made it. I made it. Oh, it's been glorious. And I think we're going to stop there as far as going through the book goes. Live stream that I do next weekend, we will go through chapters 5 and 6. But we'll get there when we get there. For now, I'm going to open up the room to any and all oncomers who are interested in talking to me either about the contents of this book or about any subject, really. So I'm going to go ahead and just start getting things ready. Let me see. Before I do, though, I'm going to go ahead and put in the live chat a link to the Amazon listing for the Creation Dialogues, in case any of you guys watching are interested in reading that book for yourself. It's not terribly expensive, and as far as Christian apologetics books go, I say it's worth it. It absolutely is. We're going to go ahead, share it in FTJ Media chat, share it in the Rumble chat. Already shared it in the Proverbs Guys Ministries chat. And yeah, that's what we got going on right now. Now, let's go grab that invite link and let's put it out there for everyone. Come one, come all. You're all welcome to join. And I'm going to go ahead and put this sucker out on the FTJ Media chat for those of you watching here. That link is now there. So anyone watching on FTJ Media, you're welcome to join. And if anyone's watching on Rumble by chance, you're welcome to join as well. That's in the chat there now. So we'll just wait for a little bit and see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and actually put on some more music for you guys. So I think we'll stick in the same album I pulled the last song from. I think we'll do. Oh, there's some good ones here. I'm going to pick two, actually. Because the first one will be a song called Vengeance is His. And then another one after that will be called The Pit. And I think you guys will like these songs. Gonna put on some music while I pick a new topic.
In shadows deep, where darkness dwells, a pain ignited, the toll of hells. Through bloodied hands, my fury grows, a vengeful heart, where mercy goes. The Lord is my shield, I seek his light, for vengeance is his, I'll prepare to fight. Vengeance belongs to God alone. This rage ignites as I reclaim my throne. Shattered past, but the fire's reborn. In his name I rise from the scorn. Night descends, the fallen cry. Judgment waits as the sinner lies. With wrath unholy, I forge my fate to strike the man who sealed his hate. In every sin, the truth must bleed. He reaped the wrath, for his is the creed. Vengeance belongs to God alone. This rage ignites as I reclaim my throne. Shattered past, but the fire's reborn. In his name, I'll rise from the scorn. A reckoning awaits. The end has begun. In dust and race, the battle's not done.
Let's do another song called The Pit.
the silent screams. Chains of despair pull me down to dreams. A hollow heart wrapped in endless night, drowning deep in the absence of light. But oh, I feel a presence near me. From the pit of despair, you lift me high. With grace like thunder, you break the lie. Loneliness fades as I reach for your hand. In your embrace, forever I'll stand. Whispers of the darkness claw at my mind. Twisted thoughts of the void they bind. The brittle bones of hope start to fray. Each breath I take feels like the end of my day. Yet in the depths I hear you calling. From the pit of despair, you lift me high. With grace like thunder, you break the lie. Loneliness fades as I reach for your hand. In your embrace, forever I'll stand. The chains fall away, I rise anew. In the light of your love, I'm free and true. Even can stay, lift me by. Gaslight its wonders and that's a lie. Glorious streets and some rest on your name. It never waits, forever I'll
I forgot to turn my mic on. Wasn't that lovely? So, anyway, as I was trying to say with my mic muted, I'm setting up a brief discussion that I'd like to have about a recent controversy involving the Christian financial advisor, Dave Ramsey. I call him a financial advisor loosely because his whole organization, his whole line of work is basically giving people financial and relationship advice. So, yeah. And plus, he's been promoted by churches that I've been to basically my whole life. So I've known for years about him. I've known his name, but oh boy, he did something recently that was a definite landmine and does not make him look good, for putting it simply. But I still need more time to set up what I want to talk about. So we're going to dig into the music vault. We're going to put on some excellent music that I know you guys will like. Just got to go right here. Let's do this one. This is always a good song. Yeah, I know this part of the show is boring, but I kind of have to improvise. And I don't want to have the wall of tabs that are so small in my browser that I can't easily retrieve them. So we're kind of just doing this as we go in terms of the setup. But if you're making it this far, I am very happy that you're still here with me. Let's see. I've got the song. Let's upload another song too from that same album. We'll do this one. There we go. And we should have a very good. Here we go.
Bones crack beneath the weight I didn't ask for. Sky split open, no hand reached down. Every breath a war I never chose to fight. Ash on my tongue, no answer in the sound. You walk where the lightning falls. Your voice in the thunder calls. Not spared from the fire, but never alone. I stand because you hold my bones. Altars crumble where I pray for rescue. Silence the gas chains around my throat. The path ahead is carved in shattered glass. Still I drag this hope like a broken coat. You walk where the lightning falls. Your voice in the thunder calls. Not spared from the fire, but never alone. I stand because you hold my bones. You didn't calm the storm. You stepped into it with me. You walk where the lightning falls. Your voice in the thunder calls. Not spared from the fire, but never alone. I stand because you hold my bones. Unshaken. Because you are.
All right. I am almost ready to go into this subject. Almost got all the tweets lined up because it's mostly going to be a tweet series we'll be looking at. Got one more song to play and then we will be ready. And we're ready to go. We got the next segment set up. But before we get into our segment on the recent Dave Ramsey controversy, if you are interested in learning more about my content at this point, I would encourage you to check me out at one of many places. First off, I have my own YouTube channel separate from the Proverbs Guys Ministries network. Be sure to subscribe to that and check out my content there, because you'll not only find Christian creationist content on my channel, but you'll also find content on other subjects that you won't find on Proverbs Guys. There's also my Spotify account, which I highly recommend you follow me on. There's also my Rumble channel. I'm approaching 200 followers, which followers are like subscribers on Rumble. Functionally, it's the same thing. So if you'd like to help me hit 200 followers there, or subs if you want to call it that, please follow me on Rumble. Then, of course, there's my BitChute channel, which I've been on since 2017. I have over 2,300 subs, over 820,000 total video views. And this is also a great place to watch all of my old content that's archived here on the channel. So you should definitely sub to me on BitChute and check out my content there. And lastly, as far as video channels go, there is my FTJ Media channel, which, give me 1 second here. Aha, Inception. There we go. FTJ Media is one of the live streaming locations for this show that we're currently living through right now. And also, it's a smaller site that can use more people on it. So subscribe to me here, watch the live shows here, comment on my videos here, follow me on FTJ Media. And as far as social media goes, I have an X account, formerly known as Twitter, and you can find that along with my Gab account, my Getter account, and my Truth Social account. You should be able to find the links to those in the tree link that I have in my description boxes. So yes, that's all the places that you should find me at. Now let me just clear the board for myself to make it a little easier on myself. All right. That should make it a lot easier. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, that will make everything much easier for me moving forward. Just catching up on what's going on over on Alt Tech. All right. If anyone wants to join at this point, feel free to, but I'm going to continue on with the new segment. We're going to go ahead and get back to our application window. Actually, we're going to do entire screen first. So that way we can make sure that the system audio is caught of the video. So we got that. Oh, goodness. Inception. Horrible. So the particular controversy regarding Dave Ramsey is documented best in this tweet by someone on Twitter, or now X, called Yonan. Yonan writes, Dave Ramsey tells a nurse to dump her boyfriend after he refuses to propose until she pays off $90,000 in debt. Caller, I'm a 26-year-old nurse with $90,000 in student loans. My boyfriend makes $250,000 a year, but he won't propose until I'm completely debt-free. Dave, dump him. He's making you prove your worth based on money. You're having to buy your way into this relationship. The number one cause of divorce in North America today is money fights and money problems. And guess what this is? This is a money fight. Now, let's watch the video and let's see if Dave Ramsey really said the things that he's quoted as in this tweet.
My boyfriend makes $250,000 a year, but he does not want to propose until I'm completely debt-free.
Interesting.
You're not going to like me. If you were my daughter, you want to know what I would tell you?
What?
Dump him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great guy.
No, he's not. No, he's not. No, he's not.
He's
he's
making you prove your worth.
Based on money.
Yeah.
To him. You're having to buy your way into this relationship. Nope. You're a princess and you deserve more than this.
the reason I've been able to put majority of my paycheck towards my loans is because he does pay for all our rent.
Oh,
all
so
our
you live
bills.
together?
Yeah, we live together.
Oh, so you're already married, but you just didn't admit it.
Yeah, it does feel like we're married.
Well, that,
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah. So what's his incentive to get married? None. The number one cause of divorce in North America today is money fights and money problems. And guess what this is? This is a money fight.
yeah.
You're just not having it out loud. You're having it in your head.
So, as we saw there, according to Dave Ramsey, if the caller was his daughter, he would advise her to dump the guy who's making $250,000 a year, but won't propose to her until she clears her student loan debt. Now, this sounds on the surface like good advice until you actually look into the matter. And now I'm going to change the way I'm screen sharing this because I want to not do the audio part. All right, application window. There we go. And let's go back here. So now we're going to look into the responses that people had. And first of all, we're going to look at the response tweet that Mom of Krills had in response to the tweet we looked at. And then you're going to see my response to her. And my response is going to be very eye-opening. Mom of Krills said, okay, I listened to the full call. They've been dating for over 6 years. She graduated just over 2 years ago and has already paid almost half her student loans off. Her boyfriend is taking care of rent, but she pays towards all the other bills. At what point do people accept that this is not vetting her? It's just avoiding commitment. Why should she owe him nearly 10 years of dating before he might propose to her? And then, of course, you heard Ramsey himself literally call her a princess. I don't know about you, but princesses usually aren't $90,000 in debt last time I checked. But anyway, I had to point out in response to her the following. And I'm actually going to see what doing this does. Okay. So the tweet I said to her, the problem is that Ramsey has consistently taught for years that you should avoid taking on someone else's debt because doing so enables their bad financial habits. The guy he is condemning is merely following Ramsey's advice. And then I show a screenshot. Oh, I attached a screenshot to my tweet, which you can see right here. I went to the search engine on Brave, and this is what the AI told me when I asked it about Dave Ramsey's position on this. Dave Ramsey advises against taking on someone else's debt, citing biblical warnings like Proverbs 17:18, which he interprets as a prohibition against co-signing or helping others get into debt because it shifts the relationship from friend or family to creditor and debtor. He argues that co-signing or paying off another person's debt creates resentment and enables bad financial habits, urging individuals to help loved ones find their own solutions rather than assuming their liabilities. While Ramsey acknowledges that you are still responsible for debts you personally incur, even if sold to collectors, he maintains that avoiding shared financial liability is crucial for maintaining personal financial freedom and healthy relationships. So Dave Ramsey has consistently said over time that you should not take on someone else's debt because you're enabling their bad financial habits that led to them having that debt. And not taking on their debts is crucial for maintaining not just personal financial freedom, but healthy relationships in general. Now, this would apply to marriage as well, because if you've been following the internet for years, you know as well as I do that there are many women out there who have either dated a guy or they married a guy and they had the guy help them pay off their debts, which was usually their student loans. And then once the student loans were paid off, these women, they either dumped the guy if they were dating him or they divorced him if they were married as soon as the guy helped them pay off their debts. That kind of story is way more common than you think it is. And so I don't blame this boyfriend at all who makes $250,000 a year for not agreeing to marry his girlfriend unless she clears her debts that she owes $90,000 for. Because if you get married, the debts of your partner ultimately become your debts. Because if you get married, and especially if you're wealthy like this guy apparently is, you're going to be encouraged by your significant other slash spouse to help pay off the debts with your money. And so this guy, by saying he's not going to marry his girlfriend until she clears her debts, I would argue he's actually taking Dave Ramsey's advice here. I think this guy recognizes that if he just marries his girlfriend and immediately pays off her student debts, that he's enabling the bad financial habits she developed that led to the debt in the first place. And he also wants to have a healthy relationship with her in that sense. So him not refusing to marry her until she gets that debt taken care of, I think is very logical. Very logical. Now, what about the rest of the internet? What do they think? Well, Scott Greer said in response to the tweet we looked at originally, the essence of the girl dad phenomenon. Ramsey usually gives tough and warranted advice to people with debt problems, but when a guy makes the same demands on his girlfriend, Ramsey goes full girl dad and rips into the guy for having sensible standards. This says debt is only a guy's problem. A girl is fine to have massive amounts of it and no serious plan to pay it off. It's a man's job to take care of it. America's Most Vaunted said in response, this is typical girl dad censored, and Dave is knee deep in that life, seeing as he thought it was a good idea to give his daughter her own show about budgeting money, something she's never had to do herself. That guy from high school said, and this one I just found funny, Dave, don't ever take on debt for any reason. Also, Dave, if you don't take on $90,000 of someone else's debt, you should die alone. These censored boomers, man, they are genuinely the worst. Now, I know Dave didn't say that the guy should die alone, but he did speak pretty disparagingly about the boyfriend for refusing to marry her over the fact that she hasn't paid off her $90,000 debt. Kind of weird from the guy who says that you shouldn't take on debt for any reason and that you shouldn't take on other people's debt either. Kind of weird for Dave to have that response. A guy named Xavier C. Miller said in response to the tweet and video we saw, if a woman elevates a man financially before... Oh, okay, I read that way wrong. If a woman evaluates a man financially before marriage, she's considered wise. If a man evaluates financial habits, debt, discipline, or long-term risk before marriage, he's controlling. The irony is Dave Ramsey built his entire brand telling people to be financially responsible and pay off debt. Yet in this clip, he tells a woman to dump a man who appears to be financially responsible instead of telling her to aggressively handle the debt first. Another prime example of why young men disregard older relationship advice. Their entire motto is to tolerate any and everything, while a man is not allowed to have any standards or expectations. Which I've seen a lot of that in the world and on the internet, so it definitely exists. The user named Kanman Lee, or is it Conman Lee? I can't know how to pronounce that. Chinese guy said in response to the tweet, "You're a princess and you deserve more than this." Boomers absolutely despise young men and coddle young women. They will always chastise, berate, and denigrate young men before they even think about telling women to take an ounce of accountability for their own actions. And I don't blame him for having that response to that video, because in that 1 minute and 14-second clip, that's exactly what we saw. He spoke softly to the girl and called her a princess, and he coddled her while basically just dumping on the boyfriend as being a horrible guy because he refuses to marry her until she takes care of her debts. The guy is literally doing the Dave Ramsey advice when it comes to debt, and yet he's the bad guy, according to Dave Ramsey. Very interesting. Matt Forney said in response to the tweet, "It's inaccurate to say boomers hate young people. They hate young men. They will do anything for young women. Dave Ramsey's whole thing is pay your debts, and he'd rather a woman dump her boyfriend than tell her to stop being a deadbeat and pay her debts." I mean, it's hard to argue based on the clip we watched. Granted, there may be some fuller context where he circles back around and does what he apparently didn't do. So if you guys watching this can find that and it exists, let me know. Share it with me through social media or comment section or whatever. And then the last one I want to look at before we get into an alternative interpretation of the clip. The evangelical dark web said in response, Dave Ramsey was completely simping in this clip until he learned that they were living together. And no, the boyfriend was not unreasonable to insist that someone with $90,000 in debt get that settled or at least on a path first. I agree. Now, there's an alternate interpretation of what Dave Ramsey did in this clip that has some merit to it. Someone named Trashy Trump Supporter said in response to this tweet, and said in response to someone else, oh, okay, that's the part I'm missing. Let's look at what Paul Elam said and what Trashy Trump Supporter said in response. Paul Elam said, here's Dave Ramsey telling a woman to drop a man with standards and boundaries to hold out for a thirsty simp who will financially underwrite her poor decisions. He literally recoils at the idea of a man exercising any self-interest when it comes to choosing a pair bond. This is what is wrong with men. And then Trashy Trump Supporter offered an alternative explanation that may have some plausibility. He said, I'm about 99% sure he was simping, but I think there is a 1% chance he was actually trying to help the guy while remaining polite to a show listener. In other words, the caller. Now that could be a reasonable interpretation. Maybe he was being all soft with the female caller and being harsh with the boyfriend as a front. That he was secretly trying to help the guy out by pretending to be ripping on him and softly encouraging the girl to dump him. Now, if that's what he was actually doing, that's evil genius type stuff there. But I'm 99% sure he was not doing that. We've seen lots of examples of people doing what Dave Ramsey did in this clip, where basically when it comes to a woman and her debts, oh, well, she gets off scot-free and she's not held accountable for it at all. But if a man makes even the slightest mistake, much less has similar debts as the woman, he's berated over it and hammered over it and told in no certain terms how lousy of a person he is and how he needs to do better. So that's definitely a problem I see going on in the world. And something I can think of as Christians, that when we're evaluating who we get into a marriage with, or even who we date, we should be really careful about the people we date or marry. Because, as I've explained earlier, there are people out there who they look at guys as human wallets. They think that men are there to help pay off their debts so they can run off and do what they want after. Many, many stories of this are out there. As a matter of fact, I think in a future video back on my own channel, TTOR, I'm probably going to make a video going through a few different stories of exactly that. I mean, I remember back in college, I briefly dated this woman. I forget what her name was, but I can remember her face. She was like a pretty girl with blonde hair and nice eyes. And for a couple of dates, she pretended to be this really sweet girl. But then after a while, her true colors came out, and basically she literally tried to use me as a human wallet. The only time that she ever wanted to hang out with me was if I would go out with her with friends to go to restaurants and eat food, or to go to parks and participate in something that required paying an admission price. Like, she literally refused to hang out with me at all unless I was spending my money on her in some way. Very glad in retrospect that that relationship didn't go anywhere, because, yeah, using men as human wallets is really uncalled for. And if the situation was in the reverse, I would condemn the reverse as well. But using people as human wallets is, in general, a really horrible thing to do to another human being, and is definitely not a godly thing to do. But yeah, since Dave Ramsey is an evangelical Christian, and since he's been popular in Christian circles my entire life, I felt like, to fill some time on this stream tonight, it was good to go over this particular subject. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing those tweets. Man, what a week it's been. There's been all kinds of stuff going on in my Twitter feed over this week, and it definitely can overload you after a while. But I'm going to go ahead and get set up right here to do one final promo before we get out of here. I think we're just going to promote my video channels this time. All right, let's there we go. All right, that all looks good. Let's just make sure we got this channel all set up. All right, there we go. All right. So before we get out of here, just as another reminder, if you are interested in my content outside of Proverbs Guys Ministries, I encourage you to go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to that, where you can see content that's similar to what you see here on Proverbs Guys, and content that you don't see here on Proverbs Guys. You can also follow me at my Spotify account. You can follow me on my Rumble account and help me reach 200 followers. You can subscribe. Oh, that's not my BitChute channel. Forgot to go there. That's the main page of BitChute. This is my BitChute channel, where you can not only find all of the shows you're watching here, and you can not only find all my videos that are on my YouTube channel and Spotify and all that, but you can also find all of my older videos, or at least the vast majority of my older videos here on my BitChute channel. So subscribe to that. Start watching away. And then, of course, there's my FTJ Media channel, which is small, but not too small relative to the site. I encourage you to subscribe there as well, and watch the shows here when they're live if you want to, or at least be willing to check out my videos here. So those are the places you can find my videos at. And of course, if you want to find my actual social media accounts, there will be a link to those in the description box. With the older videos, each of the accounts has its own link. But in the newer videos, you'll see that there is a tree link that has links to all of my socials. So with that, I bid you guys adieu. Farewell. Thank you if you watched all the way to this point, and I will see you in the next one. Toodles.